All right, welcome in everybody. Thank you for joining us here today. We're going to wait a few seconds to let some stragglers join the webinar, and then I will kick it over to Jamie.
Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm excited to present the top 10 site development considerations that are most critical to getting your project successfully entitled, permitted, and built in Tampa Bay and Central Florida. Whether you're navigating zoning challenges, seeking to minimize infrastructure costs, or ensuring environmental compliance, I'll break down each of these with insights from our recent work and lessons learned across dozens of projects. So let's get started. I'm going to go through some of these, and these are in order of how I have them listed in the presentation, but I will say that depending on the specific project, some of these can gain or lose some importance, particularly something like wetlands that might not even be part of your project would then, drop down. About me, I'm Jaime Jones. I'm a project manager here at WGI. I sit in the Tampa office. I have about a decade of experience developing and leading construction projects, development projects within the Tampa Bay market and Central Florida markets as well. I went to the University of Illinois. I have a Master of Urban and Regional Planning. From there, I spent 2 years as a general contractor, traveling everywhere east of the Mississippi, getting projects built from the ground up, managing multiple projects in a region. But yeah, I really am excited to present these to you today. A little bit about WGI. We have 18 offices right now across the country, and we are on our way to being able to serve every single market within the United States. We are based out of West Palm Beach, Florida, and we serve all of the state of Florida. So please keep us in mind. So number one, I'm going to talk about land use and zoning appropriateness. Understanding zoning and future land use is really the foundation of a successful entitlement strategy. Before anything else, you should confirm that your proposed use, density, and intensity align with what's currently allowed, and determine if you'll need a zoning variance or land use map amendment or any other upfront planning changes that can really be a lengthy process that you'll want to budget for your development and hit full steam. Sites with incompatible planning or zoning designations can take an additional 6 months to a year to get entitled due to requirements for public hearings. I cannot emphasize really enough that engaging with planning staff and council/commission members early on can save months and months of delay down the road. If your project is complex, unique, or phased, you might want to look at a PD, a planned unit development, which offer flexible frameworks that can give you more design options and room to adapt your plan to the specific project. PUDs allow aggregation of density, unique design standards and setbacks, and many other benefits that all of my clients love to look at. PUDs are a great tool for solving environmental infrastructure or access/circulation issues on a site that would otherwise be ripe for development. Additionally, in areas with active neighborhood groups like historical Northeast and St. Pete, or politically sensitive zoning like the coastal high hazard areas, public outreach becomes essential. Not only that, but engaging early with local elected officials and stakeholders helps to set expectations and build support early on in a project. There's a constant battle being waged between honoring history, protecting current residents from rising costs, and the need for cities to grow and attract new development. Helping existing residents and businesses see what issues can be solved by supporting growth and development can go a long way to save time on project approvals. Hillsborough County also encourages concurrent plan review, so overlapping subdivision and planning can speed up approvals. Additionally, the city of Tampa and Hillsborough County allow concurrent review of zoning and entitlement approvals. Getting staff aligned with the proposed planning or zoning request can be a vital part to a project schedule. I can tell you from experience on both sides of the regulatory process that having staff on board early can really help. Find the staff member that you can tell everything that they need to know. Prove to them that you have done your due diligence and have a strong argument for why your project is aligned with code, compatible with the neighborhood, and possibly show them that you are willing to fight them if needed. All starting with that pre-application meeting. You need to be prepared upfront. All right, environmental regulations and requirements. Environmental concerns can drastically reshape your site plan, especially early in the process. For example, early confirmation of whether the local AHJ has wetland buffer requirements above and beyond those required by the Water Management District can be critical in estimating the highest development potential for the site. An environmental feasibility report to review the site for wetlands, jurisdictional water bodies, and protected species is critical on sites where any of these items are expected. A wetland delineation should be done upfront to determine wetland boundaries, expected buffer limits, and estimated mitigation costs. Similarly, identifying protected species, whether that's gopher tortoises or scrub jays, early on can help you plan mitigation or avoidance strategies before you're too deep into design. Those turtles are $6,000 each to relocate, and greenfield sites with favorable soils may have hundreds of them. Subdivisions and large site developments like data centers, industrial and logistic campuses should strongly consider upfront environmental due diligence for wetlands and protected species. Also, don't overlook what's happened on the site before you got there. A phase 1 environmental site assessment to identify whether there are any known concerns of contamination is a must if there's any risk of past industrial or agricultural uses in the immediate area. If a record of contamination is found for your project, testing of soils and groundwater, remediation, and monitoring may be required. Many times a phase 1 will be required by the financing body, but is also a great idea for companies expecting to hold their property asset for any amount of time after construction and certificate of occupancy. At the end of the day, this document is worth the money to limit your environmental liability and ensure that the whole financial picture is available early on. Remediation strategies include capping and paving over contaminated areas, blending soils to dilute contaminants, and deploying chemical treatments to neutralize the issue. These costs can be significant, and having an optimized strategy can save a project pro forma. Additionally, use of the EPA's Brownfield program can provide additional funds to clean up the site, and many developers are able to capitalize on these grants to create a larger upside for the project overall. Drainage and floodplain considerations. Managing stormwater and floodplain issues on your site is a non-negotiable in Florida's development landscape. Here in Florida, stormwater management designs rule over development programs as much as the building code. Development of any sites requires that analysis is completed to ensure stormwater is captured and treated so that development is not contributing negatively to the flooding or pollution within the larger drainage basin. Designing to meet FEMA, SWIFMUD, or South Florida Water Management District criteria requires adequate space for surface or subsurface systems, and that should be taken into the site plan from day one. There are creative solutions to minimizing stormwater management facility costs, the footprint or aesthetic impact, and it is our job as your consultant to stay up to date on available products to help guide project design to the best of our ability. If floodplain issues are already a concern within the area, development quickly becomes a political issue. Neighboring properties may oppose development without first being satisfied that adequate analysis and design for stormwater management has been completed. If your project can afford it, the design of additional stormwater capacity into your system can be a great political currency and prove that you are willing to help the community deal with collective problems. One floodplain concern that can be identified, which can have a large impact on end user experience, is the type of ponds feasible for the project. Wet ponds can be very enjoyable and can include walking paths, fountains, and upgraded landscaping that are very desirable. But many dry ponds, even with the upgraded landscaping, should be strategically located away from high occupancy areas. Lastly, clarification of whether your project is within an impaired basin and will require additional stormwater treatment can help ensure that adequate surface area or filtration structures are designed and budgeted early on in the project. We always try to think beyond our site. Factors like downstream impacts, end user experience, and neighbor concerns all sincerely matter. Utility, entitlements, and infrastructure. Utility access often determines the feasibility and the cost of a site. I always encourage the preparation of a site investigation report that will identify available utilities, expected tie-in points, and available paths in terms of land use and rights to use that land for system expansion. The report will evaluate the distance and cost to extend systems if needed, and whether to begin analysis on whether you'll need a lift station or other service modification. In some cases, it will be found that land rights must be secured in the form of easements or land acquisition, just so that utilities have a path to be extended to your development site. It is best to secure those rights early in the development life cycle so that they do not become a bottleneck in the project approval. Coordinating early with utility providers like TECO, Duke, and FPL, as well as city departments, can make you or break your permitting timeline. Electrical service design should not be an afterthought, and proactive coordination for utility design plans should be done. The earlier you get utility providers' plans, the better you can control your schedule and avoid rework. And most importantly, your beautiful development doesn't have visually offensive equipment located in prime locations throughout the site. Project budgeting should include connection fees, impact fees, and any service upgrades, especially for electric and water infrastructure. In some cases, utility companies will cover the cost of expanding their systems to serve your project, but many times, aesthetic upgrades like undergrounding and decorative light poles will come at a premium borne by the project. Transportation and traffic impact analysis. Traffic is always a hot topic, especially here in Tampa and honestly everywhere else. To start, get your traffic methodology approved, and that's your green light to move forward with analysis and modeling. From there, the traffic impact study should address level of service standards and include any offsite improvements that may be triggered. Look at access management, nearby signals, turn lanes, and possible FDOT permits for state roads that might be needed for your project, and discuss those as needed with pre-apps and internal discussions with stakeholders. Cost estimates, even if rough order of magnitude, help prepare you for negotiation, particularly if proportionate share contribution is on the table. And if you're near transit infrastructure like the Sunrunner, look into transportation-oriented development incentives that might apply. Floodplain regulations and coastal consideration. In coastal or low-lying areas, floodplain regulations introduce more complexity. You'll need to meet FEMA and NFIP elevation requirements to account for coastal high hazard or coastal construction zones. Designing with resilience in mind, like elevated floors, permeable pavers, and stabilized shorelines is becoming the norm throughout the state. Storm surge modeling is also worth considering, especially with the recent changes to FEMA's firms. If you are at all interested, please reach out, and we can also tell you about streamlined technologies and the flood forecasting software that is available for a larger model of what it looks like when your site is faced with flooding. Having the space to properly grade and drain the site is just as critical as your building footprint, in my opinion. Neighborhood and political influence. Local political support can make or break an entitlement. Start outreach early, not just with neighbors, but with elected officials as well. You should align your pitch with their priorities and bring visuals that clearly show your site plan and impacts. Sometimes public partnerships on infrastructure upgrades can help unlock support as well. So please keep that in mind. Always talk through things with elected officials and see what they gain from your project. And if you can align, that can go a very, very long way. Also study past approvals in the area. They can set helpful precedent or show where others have stumbled. So analyzing those nearby projects will be a big part of proving that there's some sort of precedent to what you're doing, and the solutions that are proposed are in line with that and compatible. Parking and mobility. In urban infill or mixed use projects, parking can quickly become your biggest constraint. Understand local code minimums and maximums, and whether you can justify shared or reduced parking for your project. Our parking team creates complex models for key scenarios like shared parking, valet services, event parking demands, seasonal peak parking demands, and bicycle, rideshare, and micromobility scenarios. You may find that having a valid service or micromobility hub on your property is a great way to make ends meet with parking when that's the critical constraint. You should also account for EV charging and bike parking requirements, then weigh the trade-offs between structured and surface parking. The latter eats up a lot of land, but the former impacts pro formas. If you're in a transit oriented development overlay or near transit generally, push for ratio deductions where available. Historic preservation and architectural review. If your site falls within a historic district, your entitlement strategy needs to adjust to accommodate that. You'll likely need a certificate of appropriateness and a board review, which can be subjective and design focused. So you really need to know who your reviewer is and what their likes, dislikes, and priorities are. With that being said, there are upsides. Adaptive reuse incentives or transfer of development rights credits may offset costs for your project. Just be sure to document all historic elements and bring your design team into discussions early. Impact fees and development costs. Impact fees are one of the most overlooked soft costs in project planning. You'll need to account for transportation, water, sewer, and school fees, plus inspection and concurrency costs. In some jurisdictions, there may also be affordable housing linkage fees or mobility program charges that can significantly increase costs. It's also critical to time your payments around phasing and build out. If you pay too early, you're tying up capital before you're generating value on the site. Smart staging can go a long way toward protecting your budget. All right, bonus 5 rules of land development. Before we close, we wanted to share something a little more practical. 5 unofficial rules we've learned from doing this work across Florida. Number 1, always count your votes before public hearings. Know your audience, whether it's commissioners, city council, or planning staff, never go in blind. Know who your proponents and opponents are for any approval. Number 2, if possible, dedicate 15 to 20% of your site for drainage. I know it sounds like a big ask, but over-designing drainage early can prevent massive redesigns later. Number 3, keep your client's priorities at the forefront. Sometimes the best entitlement plan isn't the most creative one. It's the one that supports the project's business goals. Number 4, leverage relationships when engineering alone won't cut it. A well-placed phone call or trusted advisor can resolve issues that a 40-page report just won't do. And finally, number 5, there's no crying in land development. Seriously, this stuff is super hard, but if you're persistent, creative, and strategic, you'll get there. To wrap it up, these 10 site development considerations are all interconnected. Each one affects your schedule, your permitting, and ultimately the success of your project. So whether you're working in Tampa, St. Pete, or anywhere in Central Florida, this framework can help you get ahead of problems and navigate the process more confidently. I'd like to thank everyone again for joining me today, and now I'll open it up for questions.
All right, thanks, Jamie. So yes, like he said, we're going to go ahead and open it up for questions. So you can go into the Q&A, drop your questions in the chat, and then we'll go ahead and roll them out to Jamie. And so, Jamie, we do actually have a few for you here already. So our first question is, what are the typical wetland mitigation costs that you experience in Central Florida development?
So when it comes to wetland mitigation costs, the average is probably somewhere around $100,000 per acre in Central Florida. Completely depends on your UMAM score and the quality of your wetland, but it can get really significant really fast. Shout out to Rick Harmon, who does this consistently. He's a whiz at reducing that cost by going to different land banks and finding the cheapest credit possible. And yeah, $100,000 is nothing to scoff at. So where you get your credit definitely matters, and how you get that score approved by the Water Management District or the Army Corps of Engineers is really important.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Alrighty, for our second question, is WGI capable of handling comprehensive plans and future land use changes?
Mhm. Oh man, yeah. I think that this is a huge conversation, especially in Tampa right now. I don't know if there's anyone here following the comprehensive plan update. I think the city of Tampa, most of Tampa Bay, I don't know that it really applies to Orlando and Central Florida, but Tampa is trying to determine if more height and more density on a smaller area makes more sense to help solve transportation issues and things like that, compared to something like, I think what is now an outdated idea that you can still have 3-story buildings or 2-story buildings just over a much larger area. I think a lot of our transportation issues are because we have this sprawling metro. And this is something that we're always trying to address. So yes, absolutely. We are very capable of doing map amendments and future land use updates, comprehensive plan reviews and updates. And we keep our eye and our thumb on the issues across this region at all times.
Awesome. And I think that you answered it a little bit, but it looks like the only other question we have here was, in your opinion, how can we overcome outdated development considerations in Florida, such as low density, car dependent urban sprawl? Anything you want to add to that, or do you have any final thoughts that you want to share with the group here today?
Yeah. I mean, the final thoughts on that is that good development really can solve issues. Of course, I am pro-development as a consultant in this realm, but I think that changing public opinion, doing whatever you can to gain political capital as a good developer, as somebody who is looking to redevelop old and outdated and car-centric projects so that you can reduce access and connectivity issues, things like that, will go a really long way in the next decade or so in Tampa Bay.
Awesome. And it looks like we actually had one more question that snuck in here. Could you elaborate on the statement of never going blind for hearings? Never go in blind for hearings.
Yeah, really do your research. Meet with your city council or board of county commissioners, whoever your board is. Meet with them ahead of time. Have conversations with them. Be aware of the sunshine law, and make sure that what your conversations are not necessarily in writing, but make sure that you get your answer ahead of time. Most politicians will tell you. They'll tell you, oh no, I can't vote for this because of this, or I need you to address this before I can vote yes on this. Those things are extremely critical, right? We've definitely gotten burned a couple times by not checking in with the city council person, who ends up kind of believing that we didn't do our due diligence thoroughly enough because they hadn't heard from us yet. Not because we didn't, address everything within the land development code, but because they expect to be, considered and spoken to ahead of any major vote. So it's just critical.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Jamie. So yeah, like I said, it looks like we don't have any more questions in the chat. So thank you all for joining us again. Thank you, Jamie, for hosting this for us. And then we will be following up with you over the next few days with a recap of our webinar. So if you have any further questions, if anything comes up after this session, feel free to contact our team. And outside of that, look forward to our recap. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.